We have, honest to God, real football games to talk about. What kind of preseason football to talk about? It is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you. Episode 41 of the Red, Gold, and Bold with you as always from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Noted author, man about town, snappy dresser. Is that an Arizona State Sun Devil?
It is. They call it Sparky out there.
Yeah, strong. I've got a Sparky hat. Don't worry about it. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com is with us. Eric Eager for Pro Football Focus. You can read his great work at pff.com. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP in Kansas City. You can catch my show. It runs weekdays 2 to 6 p. Central Time at 810WHP.com if you're in the outside of Kansas City area. We've got a lot to get to today here in the program. We did have the Chiefs-Bears game. We're going to talk about our takeaways from that. Offense, what do we think? We got to see the first unit go there. Some wide receiver news. Juju Smith-Schuster missing practice today. Reaction to the Tyreek Hill-less wideout group. Josh Gordon. This is a scab of mine that Jeff Chadiha just can't resist picking and putting onto the rundown. I assume this is going to be to remind everybody that I had Josh Gordon being a big signing. So we'll see. I don't know. Call me Kreskin.
It is.
It is. Yeah. I figured as much. The running game, non-existence. What running backs do they keep? Is there hope with the running back crew? What did the defense show us? Pass rush, what do we think? Danny Shelton's been added along the defensive line. What are we looking for in the next game? We're going to get to all those things. But let's start, Jeff, with reactions from the game against the Bears. What was your biggest takeaway from this game against the Bears?
Well, I think they're committed to being what they claim they want to be, which is more pragmatic on offense, faster on defense. I like the overall energy. And I know it's preseason, and trust me, I try to watch as little preseason as I can just for my own sanity and state of mind. I don't think it's ever a good thing to go into the NFL season with too much preseason football on your mind. Excuse me. But I do believe, especially on the offensive side of it, I was really impressed by the first drive, by the efficiency of it, the use of all the different players. We all know this team is not going to be able to play offense in the same way it's played it as often as they played it in the last 4 years, being as explosive down the field. And so to see that commitment to it and to see guys like Michael Burton and MVS and everybody else, Blake Bell, touching the football in that first drive, to me was really impressive and very, very optimistic for what could happen this season.
Okay, so positive reviews there.
Yeah.
Eric, I think you weren't expecting that.
Curveball.
There's a curve for you. Positive reviews from Jeff Chadiha. What's your takeaway from this game against the Bears?
Well, not to steal your joke on your show on Monday, but honestly, are we going to do something about Andy Reid blowing 2-score leads in the second half of games?
Back-to-back games. I mean, it's clearly reached an epic.
Well, and not only that, he blew a 2-score lead against Buffalo too. Let's not forget that one with the Blake Bell. You guys muffed it on the Sam McDowell. Blake Bell ran to the short side of the field on an option, and it did not work. No, I mean, I'm happy. I was happy to see, Marquez Valdez-Scantling make a play on a contested ball. Sort of ad-libbing with Patrick Mahomes. I always thought, that the new receivers, that was going to be a hurdle for them. Really happy with, 6 completions to 6 different receivers. It looks like the running back room has lost almost all ambiguity at this point, right? It's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire early. It's going to be Isaiah Pacheco late. It's going to be Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was running down on kickoff return in the third quarter of that game, second quarter in that game. I think we're back to sort of what we saw last season, which is, Clyde early downs. Now they change out a kind of a non-explosive player in Darrell Williams in the sort of gadgety role with Pacheco. He made a really nice play in the red zone, sort of good contact balance and all that. It doesn't look like Rojo is going to make the team. that was a privilege to watch him. But then you look at the defense and, I think one of the things, there's a lot of positives to take from the defense, right? They cut DeAndre Baker even before that game. They cut veteran Lonnie Johnson, to get down to 85. They very clearly believe in Joshua Williams, Najee Johnson, and Jalen Watson. And that to me is like a huge plus, right? Because what has always been our negative on Spags is that he won't play young players, right? And not only is Hughes starting, right, but then you got the 3 backups, and they're all going to play pivotal roles for this team, it looks like. And then look, I played college football with tackles better than the Bears have, so I'm not going to put too much onto Karlaftis, but he looked good as well. Like, he looked spry. And he looked like, and Chris Jones was dominant on the few snaps he had. So it was a very positive, game. Henny, I do think your discussion about the backup quarterback is interesting for sure, because I do wonder what they're doing behind Mahomes long term. But it was a pretty good first game, I think.
By the way, Jeff, I asked what's your biggest takeaway, and a machine gun was unleashed with like 7 different things. Was there one that was the biggest takeaway, Eric?
Yeah, the first drive, the offense.
Yeah,
that's what I said. I came back to it.
No, you had it. No, Jeff, I'm asking you to help me bomb Eric. I thought I asked Eric one takeaway. You had
the takeaway for me is that the defense, I think, and look, famous last words. I said this on our podcast last summer. I actually think the defense is going to be good.
Okay. So that was your takeaway is from the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, my prior is that
so what's good?
Score on good? That crappy.
You say it's going to be good. What's good?
Yeah, but how would you define good? What
top 12?
Wow. Okay.
Top 12
on the record. We're taping this.
Top 12.
Yeah, this lives on.
And scoring or yards or whatever.
Some
defensive stat you're going to pull out with the 18,000 you guys have or PFF to prove points.
All right.
Was the 2019 defense good? Is maybe my question.
Let me give you my biggest takeaway first before we go too far on that one. My biggest takeaway, I think it's tough. My overall reaction to the game, and then I'll give you a takeaway. My overall reaction to the game was they are what I thought they were. Right, which is reassuring to me because I always try to guard against being too positive. This is the team I root for, so it is easier to get swept up either in overly negative during the down times or overly positive during the good times. I don't think anymore. I felt like the offense was going to be good. If I had a negative reaction, it was they suck running the ball, which we can talk about more. I mean, they still didn't do it well, and that was disappointing to me. But overall, the passing offense was what I thought it would be. I believe the passing offense is 85% quarterback. And so while Tyreek Hill's gone, I think the other players stepped up. I think they give them diversity. I think they know where to go with the football. And so I think offensively they're going to be fine. I'm with you. It's tough to get a read about what they are defensively because the Bears blow, right? And the defense really could only come back with a negative reaction, either a pass or a negative reaction. If they didn't get after the quarterback, I was going to be like, they're screwed.
Yeah.
Right, they're big problems. They did it with relative ease. When the big boys were in there, the only time they moved the ball was like this Hail Mary, this tip that, hit the quarterback, ball flies up in the air, great catch. It seemed like any positive play early on when the frontline guys for the Chiefs were in there was just a just barely completed pass. So, I liked what I saw of the defense. They really could only kind of hurt their standing. So, I mean, they are what I thought they were. I move on down the road. But let's dig into the defensive side of the ball, because I think sounds like the biggest disagreement amongst you two. And this is going to shock you, Jeff. I'm going to come in on Eric's side. Okay.
Yeah. Because it never happens on this show.
It never does. We never see that. This is why defensive backfield looked good to me as far as they fly around and hit people. Like, they're bigger out there than they've been in the past. I didn't notice where no one knows where to line up. It's going to be very different when the Cardinals.
It's honestly crazy that those players, they didn't need to be Daniel Sorensen's age to know where to line up.
Yeah, it was. But I saw big young athletes at the two back levels. I thought Karlaftis and Dunlop were a definitive upgrade. I think Frank Clark looks a little bit quicker. I think they're going to be a coverage sack team. I don't think anything's or a blitz get their team, but I think they're going to be more effective. I think the back two levels, I think just getting Nick Bolton in there in the middle is a big upgrade. Getting Sorensen off the field is a big upgrade. And I don't know how, if you're on the Chiefs coaching staff, you didn't look at that, Jeff, and go, what the hell were we thinking last year? Right? Why did we have some of these guys out there? Better to be young and fast and dumb it down, if that's what you need to do, than to be old and slow and complex. I mean, I'm definitely a believer in athletes on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm fine with you asking Eric, well, how good? What is good? But are you predicting they're going to be bad? Did you not like?
No. I predict growing pains. That's what I predict. And so I think there will be games probably in the first half where they will have issues and they will have flashes of brilliance. And I think as the season plays on, some of these younger guys will start looking better and having more confidence and understand what they're doing. I mean, ultimately, the way their schedule plays out, they're going to see a lot of really good offenses.
Yeah, that's a good point,
half of the season. A lot of really savvy quarterbacks who are going to know how to set guys like Trent McDuffie up and Joshua Williams and Brian Cook, whoever's back there. They're going to be able to take advantage. They haven't been schemed up yet. And so while I do like the athleticism, which to me, again, as I said in first opening comments, that the speed of it jumped out at me as well. Just the level of athletic ability. I really feel like Willie Gay is an understated part of what's happening with this defense. Like, he's really growing and coming into his own and understanding what he can do with his skill set. And so, yeah, I like their potential, but I think for me, it's a little bit top 12 puts them into a level that I can't get to right now. I think if they're top 15, top 18, I think that's a pretty good place to be for a group this young.
Eric, here's what I see. And I think you make good points, Jeff, about the quarterbacks are going to see: Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Derek Carr, Josh Allen. That's the first six, right? Those are guys that know what they're doing to at least a average level or significantly above. And so I think it's a fine point. Then they get to a Trey Lance and a Tannehill and a whatever the Jaguars quarterback's name.
Lawrence.
I see this defense as being much more boom or bust, right? Like, if Spags gets his guy, if he has the better day in the week of prep, the athletes are going to lower the boom, right? And they're going to make some people look stupid. Like, if they have the Chargers number, they're going to put Herbert down a lot. They're going to fly around the field. They're going to pop people. If they get beat, if Spags doesn't have a good day, if the OC beats him, pump and goes. They're going to get beat over the top for 70-yard touchdowns. They're going to ISO, a safety in a bad mismatch. Austin Eckler is going to be running away from Justin Reed on a 65-yarder. Like, I think when he has a day, they're going to kick people's asses. When he doesn't have a day, they're going to get their ass kicked. And so I think it'll be very boom or bust with the hope that the maturity comes along in the second half of the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So this is where I disagree. Oh, I agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
But that's all defense, right? The Chiefs defense last year was nothing or bust, right? Because they didn't have the athletes to boom, right? So the Spags defense was designed, to if they weren't creating turnovers, they were praying to God they caught a Teddy Bridgewater on Sunday Night Football against Denver, right? And they could hold that team to 9. Or they got one of Dak Prescott's worst games, the bad calf. But they were never doing anything, right? This defense wasn't doing anything. They didn't get sacks. They didn't get turnovers. But at the same time, you still saw the bus, right? You still saw Daniel Sorensen one-on-one with the tight end and the back half of the field getting killed, right? So, I think I agree with you, Petro, but I also think all defense is boom or bust. The Bills were the best defense in the NFL last year by a country mile, and they caught Patrick Mahomes on a great day. And it's get everybody out of the first few rows. This is lightning, so that's kind of, because I think we all view defense differently. And I watch old, when I'm coding at home, I watch old games all the time, man. And it's the Giants Niners from 1990. And that's a Super Bowl team, and that's a team trying to three-peat, and that game ends 7-3, right? That's the best quarterback of all time in many people's minds, and that's a 7. That doesn't happen anymore. Like defense is about that, right? And if they would have hung with the same, like if they would have hung with the same personnel, you know, the Hitchens and the Niemans and the Sorensens, they get the bad games, they get the Buffalo games, they get the Tennessee games, but they never get the game where, and I guess they had that against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh, like I said, I played in college with a quarterback that was better than Big Ben last year. Like, you know, you get a couple of those games, but like I think that they can play well enough this year against good teams to win because of their defense every once in a while. And that's really, like, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like that team doesn't shut people down. They get interceptions and they get sacks and they get fumbles, and they know, because it's impossible to win a game 7-3 now. You have to win a game 40-17 where your defense gets 15 of those points, right? Like and I think that this team is at least capable of that this year because they got the passers, because they got the athletes, and they just weren't last year. So you were praying for dear life they didn't screw a game up, which that was their ceiling. And then, of course, like you just hide everybody when they play the Tennessee Titans last year or the Bills. And that's kind of where I see the improvement.
Yeah, I think for me, the question is, you know, where do those turnovers come from? Because for me, defense to me, especially in today's NFL, is you have to have guys who scare people. Like Chris Jones scares people. You know, nobody else over there right now is scaring anybody. Now they may grow into that role. You know, I could see someone like Willie Gay again becoming that kind of a linebacker, or Trent McDuffie or Jarius Sneed. For me, be honest with you, I think the whole key to the defense outside of the pass rush is how good can Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed play? Because this defense played at a high level when Tyrann Mathieu could run around and play in different spots and disguise stuff. And when you start talking about the things that Spagnuolo wants to do, especially guys who were ex-secondary coaches, the complexity of what they want to do coverage-wise is a big part of their game. So it's like saying, hey, Andy Reid, we want you to play conservatively now on offense. You're going to see a different product on the field. And so I think with Spagnuolo, can he play a more simplistic style of defense and trust that athleticism and that speed taking over, or will there be a little bit of, as Soren saying, a compromise, you know, 1 week it's working, 1 week it's not type situation with this defense?
Year 4, I think the talent should be more of what he wants, right? The one thing that listen, and maybe I'm being too harsh on them, right? Like, because I see, to Eric's point where he said, like, I think this team can win games because of its defense. I think they're going to pummel some people, right? I think they're going to have games where people go, wow, right? I think the secondary looks more like a Baltimore or Pittsburgh secondary now. Like, they're going to rough some people up. Some people are going to get on the bus after playing this team and be like, I just got my ass kicked, right? I think the linebackers are going to fly around and pop people. You know, they wheeled out in 2018. They want to be, was it physical? Was that the word they were using? And they used it all OTAs, and it's like they were trying to will it to happen. Haven't heard anybody say it, but it looks it, right? Like I mentioned, Pacheco got, you know, they were doing just a pop or a wrap and release in camp today. They took Pacheco off his feet a few times, right? Like they're going to hit some people. And, you know, and I'm talking about DBs at times where you're like, oh, okay, he's going to bounce off that. And he's, you know, ass over heels. And, you know, I do think that they're going to, and maybe I'm wrong, and they're going to be so far out of position they can't get anybody, can't get close to hit anybody.
Yeah.
I like the physicality that's out there, and I have to believe that 4 years of drafting, they're getting to what's, you know, vision is.
Yeah, you play faster when you know where you're going. That's how I look at it. And so if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to play slower.
Well, I mean, you see that in Willie Gay, right? You see that in the practice clips. You see that in the game. You saw that at the end of the year last year, especially like when he got healthy. The Giants game, he was fantastic. The Dallas game, he was fantastic. I think that, to your point, Petro, when you've been – so like the bull case on the Chiefs defense last year was Chris Jones moves out to the outside. He's a plus player anywhere on the defense. We were wrong about that, right? Like that with the wrist injury and everything, that was an incomplete projection. The other thing is we thought, okay, Juan Thornhill is now year 2 from ACL. Willie Gay is healthy finally. And we didn't get that, right? We got Juan Thornhill late in the season. He actually had a good year, more or less. And then you got Willie Gay later because he was injured. The reason that I'm bullish on this defense is, like, let's be honest, like, this podcast between the three of us, like, we kind of understand what's going on with the Chiefs. And if things make sense and then if things make sense to us and then they're applied, that is what it's way, we can be, I think, a little bit more confident in our predictions than if we're sitting here wondering, as we were for the first half of last season, why is 49 on the field all the time?
Right.
Why is 95 or 55? Sorry. Why is Frank Clark like the bull on this defensive line? Why, what's going on with Tyrann Mathieu? Like, I'm going to tell you, like, the Cook, Thornhill, and Reed, you're not getting the Tyrann Mathieu stuff this year out of those guys, right? They're playing their job, right? Where Mathieu, and like, I think he's the best unrestricted free agent ever in the history of the franchise. But I think he also played like he knew that last year, and he was messing around. Like, you saw games where his yellow gloves were being thrown up because no one, like, he freelanced or somebody else freelanced. All of us kind of say, okay, well, if they draft a defensive end and he plays well, and they draft some corners and they play the best of those corners, and then if the safety play is solid, if not spectacular, and then the two linebackers that they took in the second round consecutive years play like that draft capital, it kind of follows as a corollary that the defense would be pretty good. And previous years, the team was just doing things that didn't make sense with the talent they had. They rolled out the players that they rolled the players out there like Brett Veach drafted them, right? Which is different than the last few years.
I don't think you can underestimate the effect of Anthony Hitchens not being out there, of Ben Neiman not being out there.
I know.
And I think the athleticism, and to Jeff's point, and listen, I remember Lou Holtz, a fast guy who doesn't know where he's going or is running the wrong directions further out of position than a slow guy. Right. And there's validity to that. So, and I think there's a real question. Can Steve Spagnuolo get young guys on the field and ready to play? And, he seemed to resist. And, we know how it's been a constant battle to get Juan Thornhill on the field. And even I know somebody said, hey, Thornhill didn't play well in the playoffs. It continues to be a work in progress. So I think that's part of it. One of the young guys that did play was George Karlaftis. Did you like what you saw out of Karloftus, Jeff?
Yeah. I mean, look, Eric made the point. He wasn't going against Orlando Pace out there. So they're blocking dummies that could provide more resistance than what he got on that one sack. But he played the way he was advertised. He brought that energy, that relentlessness. And I'll take a guy who plays hard every down over somebody who thinks I need to have 15 sacks, to feel good about life. I think he does bring a certain attitude to that defensive line that when you have Chris Jones playing at a high level, which he should do every game, that's exciting. And so, I think again, I feel like what they're doing with him and bringing in Dunlap and obviously Frank Clark being there, he seems to be buying into the mentoring. They seem to want to have some kind of rotation that allows him to not have to go out there and be Von Miller right off the jump. But I've liked him from the day he walked in here. And I think what he showed in that game, again, against not great competition, was a guy who's going to be playing with his hair on fire.
I agree the competition wasn't great, Eric, but what you're supposed to do is beat that. And he did. I mean, he didn't have 5 sacks. And I don't think he's that kind of guy. I think he's 8, 9.5, 7.5, 12, right? When opportunity knocks, they answer the door. What did you see first look at him in a Chiefs uniform?
Yeah, I mean, he won 31% of his reps in pass pass rushing. Like, the league leaders are 25%, right? So, the point I joked, I mean, they're not playing great players in the Bears, but part of being a great defensive end, and I think this is like what the Chiefs bought with Frank Clark and what he's failed at doing since he's been here. Part of being a good defensive end is kicking the hell out of bad offensive tackles, right? So there's an aspect of that you like that, right? Like that he passes a test there when they go against if they go against the Chargers and, I don't know, their left tackle gets hurt. Chargers have never sustained an injury before. But if Karloftis is facing a practice squad left tackle, a USFL guy, you want him to get 6-7 pressures in that game, right? And whereas Frank Clark would get like 2, and then it'd be like, wait, Frank's the same guy against everybody. So there's kind of there's a benefit there. He certainly looks like, when people say motor, like that, he certainly looked that way, like Tom Bahali-esque, because you said Petro, and you compared him to that. It's just big. It's big that Dunlap and Clark complement him in some way, because you can't put that much pressure on him. I love the Dunlap signing, because if Karloftis struggles at some things, you can complement him with Dunlap, and you don't put it all on Clark. So I do like it. He was great the other day. I mean, you can't take anything away from it.
If something jumped out at me, I think there's a potential for this to be a very deep defense. So maybe it starts the year at 16, but as attrition occurs and guys start dropping on both sides of the ball for all teams, I think their depth is pretty good, right? We can get to Danny Shelton here in a second, but kind of feel like they got Noddy and Shelton, right? They, Wharton is having a pretty good camp. I don't think he's ever anything more than a rotational guy. But I think along with the Chris Jones, you mentioned 3 defensive ends. If Frank Clark goes down, they still have Dunlap and Karlaftis. Karlaftis was playing on both sides of the line, so he's at least got the aptitude to handle that. Leo Chenault looks like he can fly around and pop some people. Took some bad pursuit angles a couple of times, but I think it was a guy that was aggressive and trying to make some plays. And I even like, Elijah Lee and
those are NFL linebackers.
Yeah, they're real NFL linebackers. And I love this one. Pig One says, can't wait for Leo Chenault to get a pass breakup in week 1 and have infinitely more than Ben Neiman, right? Like, he finally got his hands on a football like 3 years into his career. And I do think that they'll be better later from getting the scheme, which is probably a knock on Spagnuolo's schemes being too complicated. But I do think they're deep enough that they can handle the injuries. 2019 they won the Super Bowl. They lost their safety, and they were deep enough to be able to handle it and still play quality back there. And I think that's what all the young athletes back there give them. Can this pass rush with the depth push out towards 50 sacks next year or this year? I mean,
50?
Yeah.
No, I don't see it. Yeah. 40, I think, would be a huge deal. 50, you're talking about an elite pass rush. And I think, to be honest with you, as I looked around the NFL in today's game, it's like the days of like having the fearsome foursome type pass rush where you're putting out like 3 or 4 guys who can dominate a blocker one-on-one. It's like, it's hard to do that unless you're going to pay a premium for it, or you're going to end up with, or you somehow find your way to luck into a guy like Aaron Donald who can make other guys better. But I think most teams, unless you are, a Pittsburgh who typically is going to try to find edge rushers at a high level. The Bears, I think, had pretty good sack totals, but you saw what that did for them as a team last year. I think to be in the 38, 39, 40 range would be a huge number for this team. Again, I think a lot of their rush is going to come from pressures.
I think. Wait, real quick, because you're a numbers guy, Eric. They had 45 last year. They had 31 sacks. The year before, they had 32. They had 45 sacks in 2020, right? 45. Like 38 to me is an anomaly. If you're saying I think they can get to 38, then you're saying you don't think this pass rush is any better, because that's just coincidental. That could be, a quarterback that stumbled around and stayed on his feet last year, goes down, and you get credit for the sack. I'm looking 52 sacks in 2019, right? So if you're saying 38, I'm saying I don't think you feel like the pass rush is really
well, I mean, but you got to break that down into how many of those sacks are coming off pressures and how many are coming just straight off defensive line, beating somebody.
Look at this comment by our friend Gary here, which, by the way, we appreciate everybody making it to the chat. We even have Vinicius, who is a frequent listener, finally gets to watch live. Has messaged us on Twitter a ton, which we appreciate everybody. But there is a good point here, right? Where you have the prevailing nerdery of guys like me having having infiltrated NFL offenses, getting the ball out quickly. you know, essentially, you know, it does come back to coverage, right? It comes back to being able to make the quarterback hold on to the football just a little bit longer, because a lot of those pressure packages on third down last year were, you know, and I'm in the office, my buddy Dave, we're both Chiefs fans. It was like Spags brings pressure because they don't want the corners to cover that long, makes the quarterback throw the ball 5 yards, and we're all praying to God that Daniel Sorensen can somehow trip the guy up before a first down, right? That was the Chiefs defense last year. If you rushed 4, then they were so bad in coverage that, you know, the quarterback was going to pick them apart. So they couldn't sit back, so they had to blitz. But if they blitzed, the corners weren't good enough to make the quarterback pat the ball and take a sack, right? And so then, you know, and they got better. And they got better at sort of making the quarterback get rid of the ball. And but it stung them against the Bengals when the Bengals had the nads to throw the ball down the field on those pressure packages, right? And they got one-on-one with the corners. Now, I mean, if they bring the pressure, as Jeff says, their corners are going to be a little bit better than last year, and they're going to make the quarterback hold the ball a tenth of a second longer, which could contribute to more of those pressures actually becoming sacks, which I think it's like the symbiotic thing. I don't think it's just the defensive line got better. I don't think it's just the corners got better and the safeties got better. I think it's a combination of those two things that's going to lead to more sacks because, you know, there's just the quarterback's going to hold on to the ball just incrementally longer, and Spagnuolo is not going to have to get desperate in some, like, he might just be able to rush 4 sometimes and get to the quarterback, which he could never do last year, and that'll help the defensive backfield as well.
I'm listen, Carlos Dunlap is gravy, right? If he has 8.5 sacks, that's 8.5 sacks they didn't have last year because he replaces no one, right? He bumps down, you know, what was it, Arakpo? Who was
Michael Dana?
Okafor. He bumps down
I said
Dana.
Arakpo. I said, Brian Arakpo's on this defense?
I know, Okafor.
If we got peak Arakpo, I feel like it's
right.
Super Bowl.
I
that's
like
Soren has like no love for Melvin Ingram, by the way. He's just like, he was
none.
trash. He was nothing. These guys like
Ingram was very much a high pressure, low sack. He was not a finisher, right? Like that was a characteristic of his game, right? Like there are some guys who are finishers like Chandler Jones and who's the guy from Chicago? Robert Quinn. Like those guys have low pressure rates. Jared Allen was this way. When Jared Allen got a pressure, he got a sack more often than some guys do. Ingram was more of he's a gnat around the quarterback, but his sack totals were never great. And that's a point that, to your point, Petro, is like your defense needs a little bit of both. You can't, like last year they had Chris Jones, who Chris Jones actually, even though he's had high sack seasons, Chris Jones, generally speaking, is on the lower end of sack conversion. Sacks per pressure, a little lower than most. Frank Clark wasn't getting pressure at all. Michael Dana and Alex Okafor was not getting pressure at all. And then, of course, you had Ingram, who was getting pressure but not converting, right? And so that was kind of a salad of bad defense. But like, if you get a couple, like Dunlap has 18 sacks the last 2 years. Carlos Dunlap, who was cut by a team in that stretch of play, right? Because they didn't want him anymore. He's had 18 sacks the last 2 years. That's like, if he gets the guy on the ground 6.5 times this year, I think they're an immensely better defense.
By the way, I love Kirk's comment. Coffee is for closers, right? Melvin Ingram, no coffee. And the next time my waiter asks me what I'd like, I'll tell him I'd like a defense salad, please. That's great. I love that.
How do you think I've lost all this weight, Petro?
Yeah. I don't know. And I can't tell that you have, to be honest.
That was my question.
What?
You lost weight?
Yeah. I mean,
I've lost a few people have told
none
me
of it
that
your face.
Yeah.
None.
I think you're just in like smaller rooms or bigger rooms.
Well, those that care, bigger 20 pounds. Those that care, those that followed along. I mean, I see you every week, so maybe it's more gradual, but it is like about 20 pounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Congrats.
Wow. So what is the goal? Starvation?
What do you mean?
You know, like what do you I don't know. You entering a contest or, you know?
No, I'm just like trying to like Trying to be healthier, Petro.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of
Yeah.
you. I'm proud of you. So,
Maybe I'll only eat half of the Joes when I'm at your house next time.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think
Yeah.
I think he's trying to lose a pound. He's trying to go on this weight loss diet until the
One
Lions
for
make
every
the
Chiefs
playoffs.
win.
Yeah.
It's like
the
people grow
Lions
their
make the
hair.
playoffs.
It's like they
I like it.
starve myself to the Lions in the postseason.
Real quick, Danny Shelton. Does he make a difference for this team, Jeff? Do you like the fit? Is that what it's about for him at this point in his career, or is this more name value that he's been on 3 teams in 3 years? This is his 4th team in 4 years.
Yeah, this feels a lot like the Brett Veach, first round draft pick, bouncing around, a guy scouted back in the day type of move. If it works out, great. If not, then whatever, nothing lost. It feels more like a flyer on a player who, to be honest with you, it's just like they really haven't had someone who fits his mold in a long, long time. I can't remember who was the big Dontari Poe at the last guy they had who was around that size playing on this defense, and that was back when they were running 3-4 defense. So I think if he can do anything, it's a plus, but I don't think they're counting on him to come in here and light the world on fire.
I think guys like him have a role. It's just, can you scheme that strength, which is really just strength? Can you scheme that into what you're doing? And I think him on a stunt next to Chris Jones, I like. I even think, you're down and the team, they have a problem with getting teams off the field that want to run the ball. Right. And I think if you want to say, okay, we're down 11, there's 12 to go. We know you're going to pound the rock. Well, here's Shelton and Noddy in the middle and Chris Jones out at the end. I mean, I think you get a little bit more Swiss Army knife. And I think even so, I think him alongside either one of the D tackles, I think he's at least a physical presence that should make them better against the run. And I think if they can get a team into a long down and distance, it's important. And I think he's got a chance to help this team.
Well, and somebody said it in the chat, right? So Quinn said people forget about Mike Pennell, but like you think about the playoff run in 19, that was 3 straight double-digit deficit games, right? And so you needed to be able to at least hold the point of attack. There's an article on PFF.com I wrote 2020. Basically, it was talking about interior run defenders and how they changed the math of early down plays. And so, Derek Notty's supposed to be this for the Chiefs. He was not great last year. He got moved around a lot. And so I think Shelton is maybe there for reinforcement the way that Pennell was in 2020. But the fact is like the way that the math works is that if you have an interior defender who can eat up blockers early downs, you can commit fewer players to the box. And then you can play coverage early, right? And so it's sort of this, if you can somehow invite other teams to run and hold them to 3 or 4 yards of carry, as opposed to 6 or 7, you can win the math in the NFL, right? Because, essentially, you'll give up a 4 or 5 yard gain, a 6, 7 yard gain, but like all you need them to do is mess around and gain 1 yard on first down. Then you're in 2nd and 9, and now you're the book dealer and they're the square, right? And that's how you turn the math around. Whereas if you play big boxes on early downs, so like let's say you bring Thornhill into the box and you play 8 in the box, an offense is just going to rise up and gain 7 on you throwing a hitch, right? And that's a better, what you want to do. And this is again like what Brandon Staley wanted to do, and what Fangio did, and what Raheem Morris did. And Raheem Morris, they averaged less than 6 men in the box on early downs in LA. Well, how could they do that? Well, Sebastian Joseph Day was a player and A'Shawn Robinson was a player. They were able to hold the point of attack and change the math on early downs. What Los Angeles, I was going to say San Diego, but what Los Angeles couldn't do was they had old Linval Joseph there and they got moved around on early downs. And so they were facing all the 2nd and 4s in the world, and all the 2nd and 3s in the world, and it didn't add up, right? You need the nose tackle to hold the point of attack to sort of have, and it eventually helps your pass rush, because if you're facing incrementally more 3rd and 8s than 3rd and 4s, your pass rushers get better.
Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. Did the Chiefs miss Tyreek Hill? Did you see enough out of that first drive, Jeff, to think that, they're in good shape when it comes to the wide receiver core?
I think they're in good shape. I wouldn't say they're in great shape. I'm of the mindset that Tyreek Hill is a fabulous player who was a big part of what this team did. And sometimes I laugh when people ask me, well, is he going to suck when he goes to Miami now? Well, no, he's not going to suck. He's a great talent. So they're going to miss him. But it felt as if there was good chemistry, which I think is important. You have a quarterback who improvises as much as Mahomes improvises. I think of the play that was down near the red zone where he stepped up or scrambled a little bit, and MVS was running a curl and kind of went the opposite direction of where Mahomes was going, and Mahomes found him. That's the kind of stuff that happens when you have a good bomb on your quarterback. Obviously, Kelsey, that's next level stuff. Like, you don't worry about what he's going to produce from this offense. We didn't see a lot of Juju. We didn't see a lot of McCole Hardman. We didn't see a lot of Sky Moore, except for, a couple, at least with Mahomes working with them. But I think, all those guys bring something to the table that will be valuable. The question will always be, is Mahomes going to trust them enough to run the offense and be on time with what he's doing? Is he going to – and this is a challenge for any quarterback who's got his level of talent, by the way, because he can do so many things off script that is always going to be tempting to let me tuck it and do something great. But a big part of what they're going to have to do is rely on him to trust them to be where they're supposed to be. And if he's moving around, to make adjustments when they have to make them. And for him to throw the football to the fullback, again, to a backup tight end, to his new receiver, and still have three other guys who are going to be a big part of this offense, not have touches in that first drive, I think it's a positive. Again, I think they should be in really good shape with this group.
Good news and bad news. Bad news first. Juju Smith-Schuster not at practice today because of a sore knee. Makes you wonder, is he already ailing? And that's why we didn't see a little bit more of him in the first game. That to me is a little bit scary in that situation. And you talk about trusting guys. Justin Watson. I'm going to tell you that what you saw in that preseason game, now I've only been at 2 days of camp so far, but what we saw in that preseason game with Watson, which I know largely was not Patrick Mahomes, and maybe none of it was Patrick Mahomes. I'd have to go back and watch it again to see. Patrick Mahomes trusts him in practice. He's hitting Watson on a regular basis. I mean, that seems to be real. If there's a guy who's maybe a diamond in the rough, and I'm not saying he's Tyreek Hill, he's not, but there's a confidence level there. And I do think if there's one thing I could say about Patrick Mahomes, who delivered the ball to 6 different receivers, he was comfortable out there. Is that fair to say, Eric, that the receivers at least made him feel comfortable?
Yeah, and I think, again, we've never really heard him say these things about like Byron Pringle in the past. We've never heard him say these things about Demarcus Robinson, who, by the way, lasted until basically these cuts.
Yeah, already gone. Yeah,
already gone.
But can we just take a moment? So when we talk about the cumulative receivers, like Demarcus Robinson can't even stay to the 85 someplace else. I mean, you don't have to be much. Watson is significantly better.
But what's right? I mean, I'll say this in defense. I mean, I know he's been a shining light so far.
I would, as your attorney, I would recommend you to stop this statement.
What? I was going to say that I saw Justin Watson playing for the Buccaneers in Brady's first year there. He was playing a lot. He was expected to play a lot. And then in their first game of the year against the Saints, he ran a shallow route at the wrong depth and ended up being a pick 6 for Tom Brady. That was the end of his run in Tampa. He never threw him the ball again. So I thought this was a guy who was on a trajectory to be doing more stuff, kind of like what Scotty Miller was doing in Tampa at the end of the first year there. So it wasn't like this guy came out of nowhere and he didn't have any talent or no one saw any ability in him.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And as a nerd and Dynasty fantasy football, I've had Justin Watson on my team for a number of years, so I'm very familiar. I'm a fan, but he did just absolutely disappear in Tampa. I mean, absolutely disappear. And but overall, like I do think to the point, Eric, that he didn't seem like he went out there going, God, somebody get open, right? He was finding guys all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you're looking at a confidence level that is, he doesn't have that crutch to live with anymore, right? Like he doesn't have the whole, he has Kelsey, but he can't really be like, well, all I have, I have Tyreek and, I'm making it work with these other guys. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a concerted effort on his part to make this work, right? And so to me, that's invaluable, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's, the thing, and I never liked this, but like, I've had old bosses before that would, they would call it creative tension, right? And I always thought it was just like an excuse to be an asshole. But in the case of Tyreek Hill, it's like getting rid of Tyreek Hill might have been the creative tension they needed on this team, right? Which is Patrick got too comfortable with two guys who are amazing at their jobs, and the league was starting to catch up to that offense. And last year we saw it, right? Last year we saw Andy Reid made adjustments. They started to play well, and it was still a grind. It was still a grind to get to where they were at the end of the season. And getting rid of Tyreek Hill, again, we're not saying he sucks. We're just saying that it created the creative tension there was such that maybe it was worth it because it caused Patrick Mahomes to understand what it's like to play with players like Byron Pringle, right? Even though he doesn't have to anymore, but he's going to have Byron Pringle like receivers on this team at times in his career, and he's got to deal with it.
And to me, like,
go ahead.
Mahomes is a lot like I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, so he's a lot like Justin Verlander, who, if you watched him earlier in his career, who was throwing fastballs at 100 miles an hour, he could just dominate you just by doing that. But you watch him as he got older, and you watch him now, he learned how to pitch. Like, this is what great quarterbacks do. They can all do great things, but over time, they learn the nuances of the position. And so now we're seeing him get to a place where it's like learning how to pitch is taking what defenses give you, making other guys better.
Let me offer this. Instead of it being Patrick Mahomes that's having to come out of a comfort zone of just having two guys to throw to, maybe it's Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy that have to come out of a comfort zone. I'm just scheming for two guys. And maybe this gets their creativity going, and this makes them more diverse, forces them to instead of saying, listen, we'll just run a post because Tyreek Hill's too fast, I can't cover him. And now get creative with their route combinations and give Patrick Mahomes more to work with. I don't know. I'd have to sit in those meetings and hear the game planning sessions and hear what plays Mahomes wants and what he's eliminating on Saturday night and, all those things to really know. But I we always come back. Quarterback gets too much credit, gets too much blame. I'm all for it. But, we can't be saying it's just, whatever defensive play caller said, well, Mahomes, if you take away his first read, he just plays street ball. Well, then that's on. If that's true,
did we lose Soren?
I think we lost Soren a little bit. I actually want to take a picture of him.
That's right. You should.
Right, we got you. Oh. We got Soren back. I almost got to use Soren's old phrase against him. Enough. We lost him.
That's
we lost
right.
you for a second.
Yes.
You look
great. We lose you again?
Intermediate phase of life.
I have no idea. I mean, I'm hardwired in, so I shouldn't be having internet problems. It doesn't say I'm having internet problems, but
you were just getting ready to fire it off, and you just got stuck. Yeah.
Well, that was your attorney stepping in before you made your statement, Petro.
Yeah, that's right.
I appreciate it. When I go to edit this up, I can't wait to see what how stupid I look like, because there's nothing worse than a freeze frame. I love to freeze frame people I know on TV and find the point where their eyes are like half closed and everything, and they just look drunk. And
Jeff, just make sure that you're aware now that when you are on your NFL Network hits that Petro's doing that to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know when we play pickup basketball, it's called ball don't lie. When that stuff happens to you, you're saying the wrong things.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where
I'm making my point.
Where I lost my point was just that maybe it's Andy Reid and that.
Well, but I was gonna say that is, when people talk about the issues with Bieniemy and all this stuff, and some of the tension there. It's like I think some of that was that Mahomes was so good at, okay, here's the play we're calling, but I want to do this and then making it work. And so I think that was the more common theme that might go away this year, whereas let's run the offense the way we're calling it. And if we have to do more improvising, we can do it when we have to, but we're not going to be like 90% of what we do.
Jeff, after Josh Gordon, what other wide receivers do the Chiefs keep?
Oh,
it's Gordon 1, right? Then after him, who's next?
That's right. I forgot he was there, to be honest with you. It's like
he actually I hate these words even coming out of my mouth because it's been so disappointing. And I had such high hopes for the signing. He actually had a really good practice today. At least, I saw him make catches down the field.
But don't you feel part of the problem here?
He looks great. Honestly, he looks in great shape. Like, remember last year? He looked like me before I lost the weight. And then
Des Bryant's never been a fat ass, but he can't get open.
Well, sure, but you'd rather he look physically like he did in Cleveland than look like last year where he looked like a cross between Calvin Benjamin and Calvin Benjamin. Like, he looked at Calvin Benjamin last year. Let's be honest.
Like Calvin Benjamin
and he looks. Benjamin. Yeah, he looked. I thought he looked spry the other day. It doesn't mean he's gonna be great. The guy hasn't played much. He's caught one ball in the last 4 years, but I think they can keep him around on the practice squad, can't they?
Can they?
No, I don't think so.
I was gonna that's all expired.
Those rules are weird now, right?
They are weird. What do you think they keep at wide receiver?
I think they keep 6. I think they keep the top 4 guys: Hardman, Moore, Juju, Smith, Schuster, and MBS, and then Watson makes it because he can play special teams. I think Darius Fountain makes it because he can play special teams. Mm-hmm. Dave Tope tends to find a way to get some of the guys that he wants in those, those peripheral roster spots.
So here's my question though. Then how many running backs, wideouts, and tight ends do they keep? Right, because Blake Bell is going to be fine, right? He's going to make it.
Yeah.
So you're looking at Kelsey, Blake Bell, Noah Gray's a draft pick. He's also looked very good, and then you have Jody Fortson, right? So you have 4 tight ends that have a chance. Then you have running back. You have 3 guys I think you have 4 if you count the fullback that are locks. And then do they keep Derek Gore or Rojo? I would imagine not if they're going to keep 6 wide receivers. Because I don't think they can keep 4 wideout or 4 running backs, a fullback, 6 wide receivers, and 4 tight ends. Especially not with the offensive line depth that they have. I know you hate Kennard, and he did look really bad a few times. He's not getting cut, Petro. So he's on the team.
Honestly,
he's a guard.
He is a guard, and more I'm hearing about how he told every team that if you draft me a guard, I'm not playing.
He was very, from what I heard, very abrasive as a person at some of the off, the camp, the Senior Bowl type of things.
Well, I've heard he's quite abrasive to be around all the time, and which is, there's the Buddy Bell. You're not good enough to be an asshole. Like, you got to be really good if you're going to drive.
I'm glad I can say that on air. I was not sure. I just went with it, but I'm glad
you've already broken the barrier down. Plus, based on Danny Shelton today, where he's dropping F-bombs and S-bombs.
I listened to the first hour of your show. I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah, it was. Who knows? We try to be somewhat politically correct here, not to drive off anybody who's offended. We're not. Hope you're not. But 5 or 6 wideouts. I think the running back last year, they kept 3 running backs and a fullback to start. It would later carry.
And then Gore was elevated late.
Yeah, Derek Gore was elevated,
but Clyde went on IR, right? So that was kind of
they did get to 4. I don't remember who all it was. It would have been Darrell Williams. I think when Clyde came back, they had Clyde, Darrell Williams, Gore, and
McKinnon. But McKinnon went on IR for 3 weeks during this season.
I think at the end they had all of them.
Yeah. Well, can we all agree if they're going to keep 3 receiving tight ends and 3 undersized running backs, this notion that they're going to be pounding the ball more is out the window.
3? They're going to keep 4. Like the 4 tight ends, not Blake.
Blake Bell's a blocker.
Well, he's a blocker. That's
caught a touchdown.
Fortune and Gray to me is just redundancy. Like, pick one and go with it.
I agree. And I don't know how many practices Fortson has to miss. Like, it's a great story, but stop trying to recreate Antonio Gates. Like, just come on. I
He
mean,
played well at times. I mean, the problem is if you're athletic and you are of that size, how many of those guys have like not been useful? Like, you look around the
Well, I
league and
think
like
Demetrius
how many have
Harris.
not been useful?
Can we start with
Dude.
Demetrius Harris?
I mean, although, no, yeah,
well, no, but like in the league, you've had like Irv Smith, you have these big, tall, athletic tight end guys, and it's hard for them to really. I mean, Demetrius Harris was an outlier. If you get targeted 20 times in a year and you drop 7 of them, that is a thing. But most of these guys, everybody is giving Jody Fortson made plays when he was out there. But my point is like, if you take a tall 6'4", 250 guy and you match him up on linebackers in this league, and your quarterback play isn't like that one guy that almost got knocked unconscious against the Chiefs, Donald Parham. It's the same thing. That guy's an AAF player, right? But like, that type of player can get open in any offense. And the problem is those guys don't stay healthy, right? Irv Smith missed last year. He's missing training camp this year. Jody Fortson gets hurt. Like, it's easy to go out there and make plays as a receiver when you're that size. It's hard to play the tight end position for 17 games and then also do that without getting injured. That's the problem that people don't see with Jody Fortson, is that you're not good enough to play wide receiver, and you're also not like sturdy enough to play tight end for 17. That's the impressive part about Travis Kelce, right? Like, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. That's why Tony Gonzalez, that's why Antonio Gates, like, those guys could actually stay healthy. But like all these 6'4", 250 guys, like, they're
he's
in
like
the league.
6'6". I don't know why you keep saying that, because he's like 6'6", 225. Okay, because he's not even.
Okay, but you know what I mean. Like,
I'm much
big
more
wide receivers.
Look,
big wide receivers.
Yes, and I think that's why it's Josh Gordon or it's Fortson.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're closer to being the same thing. Gordon more of an elevate and go get it, but stronger than the corners, faster than the safeties. That's what those two are, at least at this point in their career. I think Jeff makes a great point. I mean, Noah Gray is supposed to be a receiving tight end. And I don't know what the media, some of the immediate Chiefs media is watching, but I would appreciate if Noah Gray stops too quick, there are going to be a couple of noses right in his finger, because they act like I'm like, what have you seen? What did Noah Gray do to get this? I mean, he's a 4-phase guy on, and I'm like, settle down, right? Like, if they have Jody Fortson and it's just for goal lines, and he has a Mark Boerichter like year. Mark Boerichter, his rookie year, had 20 catches and 8 touchdowns. Like, if you're like, listen, he is a complete mismatch. Pat can throw it up to him. He's quick enough to get a little wiggle and enough separation that we can pitch and catch him at the goal line. Fine. Noah Gray can't do that.
Can I ask a question, possibly to end the show, leading on something you talked about with Sam yesterday on your show?
Okay.
Would you rather have that player, the 4th tight end that can go up, or would you rather have the backup quarterback that can pick up yardage in the middle of the field and at the goal line? I want to see I know what your opinion is, Petro. I think I know. I want to know Jeff's.
Well, listen, okay. What's
the
Jeff?
Backup quarterback? This is a goal line question.
So I don't know if you heard my
yardage question.
I don't know. Yeah, I was rambling on about the goal to go and going for 2, and I said, if you're not going to quarterback sneak it with Patrick Mahomes, go get a quarterback that you will, preferably get a quarterback that can do more than that. Like, if you could get Cam Newton right now, right, to give up his ego and say, I'll be your goal line guy. I'll be your number 3. Right. And I'm not enamored with Chad Henne either. This was part of the conversation as well, that 4 years into it, I'd like to think that you could go beyond Chad Henne. I don't hate Chad Henne, but if Chad Henne has to play 10 games, you're begging to get to 5-5. Okay. And, I think there's a little too much credit being given to Chad Henne. Anyway, point being, I said, if you're going to stop carrying Marcus Kemp, and these guys are hard to find because teams don't play their quarterbacks like this. But like I was kind of intrigued by the Miami quarterback who came over from from Houston. What was his name? They tried out at wide out, but he was at the U last 2 years. He got hurt.
Oh yeah, De'Aaron King.
I'm why not a try for like if you're going to carry a sixth wide out, or if you're going to carry two quarterbacks, and maybe he's a seventh wide out, but you're going to feature him and you're going to come up with a package and he's going to play option football down there. I'm intrigued. Ideally, it's a guy like Cam Newton. Like if Cam Newton would check his ego at the door and say, "I want to win a Super Bowl. I get it. I don't want to start and throw 20 touchdowns and 18 interceptions for a piss poor team. I want to come in and I want to run for 10 touchdowns for the Kansas City Chiefs in 4th and 1, and I want to win a championship. Me and Patrick Mahomes together, you can't stop us." Right? Like that's my dream for what I want as a third quarterback. So that was the whole premise of what I was talking about. Like stop farting around. So which would you rather have? If Jody Fortson would be 20 catches, 8 touchdowns, that's the most extreme. Or you could have the quarterback that could do the short yardage. Which would you rather have?
I'd probably take Fortson. Well, but my thinking is that I understand what you're proposing, but I think the way the Chiefs are built roster-wise, like you just, even if you have that kind of quarterback in shorter situations, I think the other people you put on the field would make him kind of obsolete. I mean, what makes executing at that distance so hard at that part of the field is that you have to either trick people or just push them around. And if you're coming in there with a big quarterback, like who else you put on the field to block for him?
I think Cam Newton's more than just a big quarterback. First of all, he is a big quarterback. It gives him a high, just to have Cam Newton at 6 feet 5.5 inches tall. He can go over the top on sneaks where like the only reason I could possibly, it's such a freak accident that he had. This is what I was talking about, the knee injury. Like get over it and start quarterback sneaking. Quarterbacks generally don't get hurt. But if you're like, listen, he's a shorter quarterback on average. He's shorter than the average height for quarterbacks. And therefore he doesn't get as high, can't get up over the offensive lineman. He's exposing himself to more shots to the head from linebackers trying to spear over the top. Okay, then go find somebody that can do it. And Cam Newton can get over the top. Cam Newton can power things in. Again, he's my ideal fit. I know he's not available because he wouldn't take the job. Right. But I think if you could find that guy, I'd really like, I acknowledge it's not easy. I acknowledge it's not easy.
Well, but I like what someone said here. It's like Kurt Melton, just hand the ball off to somebody. that could work too. But that's not their personality. The whole point I'm saying, when you go out and you get all these receiving tight ends, it's like you just can't line up in goal line and just maul people. You have to you have to trick people.
That has to be your character, right? Like that has to be your. And they just, I mean, their running back is just not, I mean, you're dragging Petro in our pre-show notes about Josh Gordon, but I mean, honestly, the Clyde thing. I mean, the Chiefs need Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be a running back this year, don't they? Like, because that's really the. And look, I actually made a bet today. You guys will be surprised that I wagered money on something. I took Clyde Edwards-Helaire over 700 rushing yards this year because that is
I love it.
That's the disrespect that they're showing Edwards-Helaire in the markets. But like you look at his usage, he is the first and second down back for this team, and this is a good offense with a good offensive line. If he plays 14 games, this is the most trivial bet of all time. The problem is you can't like. I have trust issues with him. But it's an easy bet for him to make. It's an easy climb for him.
I've told you I'm doubling down on the guy. Like I still believe in the talent. I think it should be a good fit. I'm with you. I think he's going to have a better year. And I think if they would stop the RPO crap, which on 2nd and 1 it was still RPO. I don't know why. And what I'm hoping it is. They're like, listen, we put RPOs on tape all last year, so we're going to run it. This is nothing new. Everyone's seen this. And then they're going to get into a game, and on 2nd and 1, if they want to run the ball, like, first of all, why is Burton on the team? Like get the fullback. There's nothing. Get him. He covers kicks. Get him off the team. I know he was 8 for 8 on 3rd and 1s. All right. But if you're carrying Burton to cover kicks and to carry the ball 8 times for 8 first downs, find a quarterback. that can
but
do the short yardage
here's what
crap.
I'll say about the Burton stuff, because this is part of your worldview, I think, about this team. The first play of the game, there's a motion in by the wide receiver, I formation, play action pass. Like, I do think this team needs to be under center more. This team needs to be running play action passes more. This team needs to be able, like, they need to capitalize on the fact that their offensive line is good. Like this, the thing with Mahomes over the first 4 years of his career is they almost never smashed the easy buttons with him, right? He was great, and he had one of the hardest quarterbacking assignments in the league. Stand in shotgun with a crappy running back next to you and make plays with multiple wide receivers. What I liked about some of the second half of the season games last year, but especially in the first preseason game, is you got a fullback, go I formation, tight end. You got two wide receivers. One of them's got great deep speed. The other one's a great underneath guy. Call play action pass and run the over route to Kelsey, right? And make
Eric,
big plays that way.
Your friend Vinicius is asking you to explain what an RPO is versus a play action.
Like, why is there? What's the difference in the advantage?
So you're getting a math PhD. Okay, I got this. All right, so
this is really a blocking PhD.
I don't know if we need math for this.
Yeah, there's no math necessary here.
But like so an RP and granted, the first time we helped Collinsworth with the Super Bowl in 2017, Al Michaels screwed it up like 8 times in that broadcast of the Philly New England Super Bowl. So it's not easy, but it's basically an RPO has run action. Basically, so run action to the degree that you have to get rid of the football early, or else you're going to get called for a penalty.
Yeah.
Play action has a run fake by the lineman, but eventually has pass pro. So that's the one thing for the line action, right? So our argument the last year was that the offensive line was tepid when they ran RPOs, meaning like it wasn't. Like, there are certain plays that can't be RPOs.
Could you stop? You're not doing well here.
I haven't taught in forever, Petro. So maybe I'm being like.
Listen, play action. The offensive line knows that they're going to pass block. They sell a run block, but they know the ultimate job is to pass block. So you have offensive linemen prepared to pass block. Again, they sell the run. They'll fire out. They'll hit, and then they immediately go into their setup for a pass protection. When you RPO it, the offensive lineman doesn't know what the outcome's going to be.
The quarterback has the option to hand it off or pass. That's the key part of it.
Yeah, the offensive and the offensive line has to be able to do either, but they never really know which one it's ultimately going to be, because the play is called knowing that if the end does this, if the linebacker does that, they have their keys, then I'm going to hand it to the running back. Well, the offensive lineman can't fire off and get 4 or 5 yards down the field like he'd like to do. If he knows he's going to run, he's going to fire off. He's going to drive somebody. If he slides off the first guy, he's going to the next level, trying to find somebody else to hit. And now when he's got to potentially pass block, he can't get too far down the field. So he's got to come back. So the offensive lineman doesn't really know the outcome, and he can't fully invest himself in either type of block. So you get a diet run block, right? And they've got these maulers up front. And it's like basically unleash the hounds. Stop trying to trick somebody and just kick somebody's ass.
There are
Don Pierce said
you can't run with RPOs.
Yeah, like Don Pierce said, RPOs work better when you run the ball.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think they can run the ball. That's the thing. Is like I just think it's better when they run power, or like when they run.
I agree with you.
Gap and stuff like that, where like it's actually using the physicality of their offensive line and what they've invested so much in. I think Andy still is like living in this poverty mindset where you're going from guard to guard. You're going, Laurent Duvernay Tardif, Austin Ryder, and like I can't even remember who started left guard in that Super Bowl, Nick Allegretti or something like that. Like when you have that poverty mindset at that position, like you do kind of do the gimmicky stuff, but they have good players now there.
Yeah, the heyday of the RPO, it's just not as effective. And Eric's detailed this a lot. Like the linebackers don't bite anymore against the Chiefs on the RPO; they stay home. And the heyday, because I remember defensive coordinators in the Big 12 telling me, "Listen, Baylor has one play. Art Briles just unleashed the RPO, and with Robert Griffin III as well, running it and handing it off." And it's like, the linebackers come up, he throws this slant. And they had Baylor track team guys catching a slant with one guy to beat the safety, right? Because the underneath had cleared out coming up to stop the run. And then if you stayed back, they handed off, and they had powerful backs that could run through arm tackles, and they were running for 7-8 yards a carry. I mean, that was but teams have now seen it, studied it. They've had a decade to prepare for it. They're better against it. And Andy Reid seems to still be in love with it, or Eric Bieniemy, or whoever you want to ask, to the degree of, it's initial, it's like when
part of it is kind of
couldn't be stopped, right? And then everybody could, like, they're still loving it. Like Ron Brown and Ricky Williams are out there running the Wildcat. It's that day it's a much more defendable play now.
Well, and I'll say this now, like if a linebacker's not going to move, you have to get up to the second level and block them. And a lineman is more hesitant to get up to the second level and block a linebacker if it has a possibility of being a pass play. And they've been coached to say, don't go too far upfield because we could throw this ball behind you or behind the linebacker. And we could get a penalty on that kind of play. So like, if the linebacker's not going to move out of position, then you have to go block him. And that's kind of where they've gotten stuck a little bit. But just to close, like, I think the other thing is a lot of these teams count.
Eric, why don't you take the last words? Don't you love, Jeff? Just to close.
Sorry.
This show's over now. No, I heard him say that. I guess we're done.
I'm getting ripped. Yeah. I'm getting ripped to shreds. Somebody on Twitter was like, "Hey, don't seek affirmation from Petro." I agree, but like, here's my the thing that a lot of teams do is they chart RPOs, whether it's a run or pass, as rushing efficiency in their internal KPIs. So part of it, I also think for somebody like Reid, who has been criticized in the past at being too pass happy, I think he sometimes is trying to like rig the statistical game too. And obviously he just has to get over that, I think.
All right, let's close with this, if you don't mind. What you want to see next, right? To feel confident that the Chiefs are barreling towards a special season, Jeff, you want to see what in their next game?
More defensive improvement. I think at this point, the roster construction is not really that big of a question. It feels like a lot of the spots have already been determined, especially with some of the way guys like Gordon and Gore and Jones played in this last game. I think they'd have to do miraculous stuff to make the roster now, but certainly you want to see more continued growth. I feel like watching these rookies, these young guys like McDuffie, like Karlaftis, like Joshua Williams, the way they fly around. I'll be watching a lot of that the next couple games.
And they're clearly getting a much bigger test, right?
Carson Wentz coming in. Yeah,
Carson
they should feast. Right.
A Washington team that's firing coaches in camp. I mean, this is a salty bunch that's ready to really stick it to it. Eric, you want to see what?
Patrick Mahomes stay healthy.
Yeah, that's so cheap.
But like, I think Jeff's right. Like at this point, there's not a whole lot to learn. Let's get to Arizona. Let's blow Arizona out.
Yeah, I want to see him run the ball. I will feel better if they're clipping off more than 2.5 yards a carry. Like I do think that's something. And if you take out Denny Crum or Inspector Crum or what's his first name? I forget. Who I actually don't think played
Louisville basketball coach.
Justin Crum's not bad.
What is it, Justin?
Dustin Crum.
Dustin.
Kent State's finest.
I didn't mind him. I thought
my favorite MAC quarterback since Bruce Gregkowski.
I thought he actually looked pretty good, based upon my expectations. But I want to see him run the ball better. And I'm not gonna throw a fit if they don't. And if they don't against Green Bay, I'm going to assume that they're going to show something different when the regular season comes around, because I do think that can make them a lot more diverse. That's what I'd like to see. Run the ball better. All right. We thank you for all the kind words. Again, if you catch us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation in the chat room on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook. We stream live 9 p.m. every Tuesday. We're back at it every week. Every Tuesday, we're back at it, the three of us, with our Too Deep NFL podcast. That's coming up, NFL in general, all the NFL. We talk about it Thursdays. We stream that at 9 p.m. We hope to see everybody there. Thank you very much for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.